what prompted you to go with that, with the Psalms? And how did you discover, well, I'm assuming through the shop, you discovered that that's how they were magic?
No, my grandma.
Right.
My grandmother was a Southern Baptist faith healer. I grew up with the use of the Psalms as a healing, a way of healing. I was never referred to as magic.
Right.
That would not be a word that was used for those folks. Like I said, she was a faith healer. And she, magic. And my family is part of the Primitive Baptist. We're this little sect of mystical, magical Baptists, but you don't say mystical and magical. You just do faith healing. So I grew up with it. And when I got into the shop, seeing other people do it was my fascination. And then starting to go down that rabbit hole of what is the Psalms? Other than one of 5 books of the Old Testament, and my grandma used to do it when the phone rang, and they'd be like, Miss So-and-so's in the hospital. And she'd be like, okay. And she had a little table that had a white candle on it. She had a white Bible that she would open it up to a healing psalm, and she would sit there and read that psalm out loud. All right? And so getting into it further and understanding, first of all, the Psalms predate Christianity by 1,500 years easily. And that they are this Psalmatic King David magic, and which slowly over time, we forgot its history. We often, think of, King David was the one that is the father of modern occultism as we know it. His son, King Solomon, Solomonic magic, the keys of Solomon, the 76 names of demons, the ring of a demon that he can destroy a demon with, and things like that all come from this time period. The same time period that the Psalms were being sung. The Psalms are incantations. They're either a lamentation or an incantation. And unfortunately, we only have 150 of them. We do know through references that at points there were thousands of them. They were sung individually, much like, we all write our own incantation and we all speak our incantation. That is how the Psalms were being done. The surviving Psalms that we have, we do attribute 3 of them to King Solomon, and there's one to Moses, and then there's, some other folks that we have. And these are the beginnings of the Abrahamic faith, and people not quite understanding what the beginning of the Abrahamic faith was about. That was Abraham and Sarah, these 2 wonderful people that were looking upon the corrupt temples of Babylon, looking upon the corrupt temples of the Phoenicians, the Etruscans, all these other folks, because they were corrupt. At this point in history, the temples were being ran by priests who were charging you to come into the temple. All right? If you wanted to go to the temple of Mercury, you want to go to the temple of Artemis, well, sweetheart, you had to pay to play. All right? And Abraham looked upon it and said, no, I can talk to God on my own. I do not need these temples. All right? And turned his back on the corruption of the priest. Much like we talk about today, where you start thinking about some of that. This isn't too ancient. You can relate to this story, and I'm talking about 2,000 years ago. But that's what Abraham was turning his back on. Was that I don't need a mediator. I don't need a priest. I don't need a temple. I can stand on this mountain and have an experience with God. And at this moment, this was the formation of the Abrahamic traditions. All right. And during this time, that's, where we have the Brothers of the Light. We have different sects going on in this early time period. and all of them were mystical and magical. All right. And the Psalms were being sung during this time. The Psalms were, some of them were being written, some were being forgotten, you know. And then slowly, as the Christian faith solidified down, and we ended up in the Council of Mysia, where we said, these are the official words. And we put God in a box and said, the rest of this, no, ignore it. Just ignore it. We're not going to even act like it happened. All right? And starting to really rediscover and understand that, you know, and when you are singing the Psalms, you are connecting to all of that history. You are connecting to these original people who understood that I can have a relationship with divinity. I don't need you. Me and God are just good. We're talking fun.
There is a bit of a I don't know for where you are, but where we are in Britain, generally when I speak to a lot of witches, a lot of pagans, the idea of using a prayer or a psalm is horrific because it is so, it's just associated with Christianity, and that's not what I do as a pagan. So to actually read about all the history of the Psalms and actually learning a little bit about hoodoo as well, it's an eye-opener. It is an absolute eye-opener. The book's fantastic.